The movies gave Aragorn and Arwen a perfect fairy tale, but Tolkien's real ending is a devastating, forgotten tragedy. Peter Jackson handed us a flawless illusion in May of 2003 when the theatrical cut of The Return of the King closed its curtains. We all remember the warm radiance of Minas Tirith, the sudden silence of a roaring crowd bowing to four stunned hobbits, and that sweeping orchestral crescendo as Aragorn locks eyes with Arwen. It's the ultimate cinematic payoff. A radiant queen choosing love, a legendary king reclaiming his throne, and a broken world stitched back together under a blooming white tree. But that sunlit frame is a beautifully constructed lie. By pulling the plug right at the wedding celebration, the films permanently froze these characters in an artificial state of eternal joy. Tolkien himself refused to leave them there. Deep within the dense, frequently overlooked appendices of the original texts, he penned a devastating postscript that fundamentally dismantles the Hollywood fantasy. The sprawling narrative we worship doesn't actually conclude with a triumphant sigh of relief. It leaves a massive, compounding emotional debt hanging over the heroes. And that turned their celebrated romance into one of the most agonizing and slow-burning tragedies in the history of literature. The real pain starts long before the gray hairs show up on Aragorn's head. Right at the celebration, lamps burn out in Minas Tirith, and a quiet, brutal exodus begins at the western shores. When Elrond boards the white ship at the Grey Havens, Arwen isn't just waving goodbye to her dad before a long trip. She's executing a permanent, cosmic divorce from her whole lineage. Because she chose mortality, her soul is fundamentally rewired, meaning she won't just miss her people while she lives. She's barred from the undying lands forever. Watching that boat slip past the horizon meant realizing that when her own breath eventually stopped, she would pass completely out of the circles of the world, never to cross paths with her family again in any version of eternity. It's a level of psychological isolation that's almost impossible to wrap your own head around, turning her immediate wedding bliss into a bittersweet countdown from day one. You can only wonder how that unspoken weight altered their quiet moments together. For the next 60 years, Gondor thrives under a spectacular era of peace and reconstruction, but every single tick of the calendar acts as a silent enemy. Aragorn wears his crown with immense dignity, aging with the slow, robust grace peculiar with the blood of a Numenor. Yet, while his life feels full and expansive, Arwen's universe is rapidly shrinking into a ghost town. As the decades roll by, the literal magic of the landscape begins to evaporate. The hidden valley of Rivendell, the home where she spent nearly 3 millennia, is reduced to empty, silent stone halls overgrown with weeds, stripped of its relics and songs. Arwen has to watch the physical spaces that defined her entire existence turn into ordinary, hollow ruins while human steel and mortar aggressively replace the ancient woodlands. It's a slow, crushing realization that she hasn't just lost her family. She's completely outlived the very epoch of magic that sustained her spirit, leaving her as a stranded, singular relic in a world that is actively modernizing without her. Every celebration in the White City carries a faint undercurrent of grief because she has outlived the world she belonged to, and her mortal husband is the only anchor keeping her tied to a rapidly changing Earth. Yet, even a century of peace cannot delay the inevitable arrival of winter. Everything changes in the year 120 of the Fourth Age. And honestly, this is where the fairy tale completely falls apart. Aragorn is hitting 210 years old. Now, for a regular human, that's impossible. But for a guy with his royal bloodline, it's the absolute limit. He's still relatively healthy, but he starts noticing those tiny, terrifying signs that his mind and body are finally beginning to slip. And instead of pulling a typical king move, clinging to power or waiting until he's a frail, withered shell of himself, he decides it's time to just voluntarily stop living. Imagine being Arwen in this scenario. You're standing in your bedroom and your husband calmly looks you in the eye and tells you he's basically picking his own expiration date. It hits her like a physical punch to the gut. Sure, she knew he was mortal when she married him, but knowing it intellectually is nothing compared to looking at the person who anchors your entire world and realizing he's just going to choose to walk into a tomb. All those centuries she spent thinking she was prepared for this completely fly out of the window. It's the exact moment she realizes she is profoundly, terrifyingly unprotected. Now, what happens next in that dark bedroom is just a brutal, agonizing argument between two people who know their time is officially up. Arwen completely drops the composed, stoic queen act. She's weeping openly, practically begging him to just hold on for a little while longer. And this is where the famous gift of men, that whole philosophical concept the elves always talked about in these beautiful abstract terms, completely reveals its ugly side. Now for her, there's nothing beautiful or divine about it. It feels like a sick joke designed to punish the person who left behind to deal with the wreckage. Aragorn holds her hands, looking at her with this mix of heavy love and genuine guilt because he knows exactly how bad he's screwing her over by leaving. He tries to calm her down with that classic line about how they aren't bound to the circles of this world forever, trying to throw her a lifeline of hope beyond the grave. But the second his chest goes completely still and his hands turn ice cold, those poetic words mean absolutely nothing. She's just drowning in total, suffocating silence. And how she reacts to that silence changes everything about what she does next. The moment Aragorn's eyes close forever, the machinery of Gondor keeps moving without missing a single beat. Their son, Eldarion, steps forward to claim the heavy crown of the unified kingdom, initiating a swift, aggressive transition into a thoroughly mundane age of men. As the bustling streets of Minas Tirith fill with the loud politics, commerce, and concerns of a whole new generation, the former queen instantly transforms into an invisible, living ghost within the high stone walls of her own palace. There is no active role for a dowager elven queen in a court centered around new human politics and foreign trade agreements. She wanders through the massive, echoing corridors of the Citadel, completely detached from the domestic policies her son is implementing, watching ordinary mortal servants treat her with a detached, uncomfortable pity. The vibrant capital city that once represented her greatest triumph now feels like a cold, bureaucratic fortress of stone, pushing her out to the absolute margins of the palace, where her daily routine holds no administrative purpose. A deep, unbearable instinct eventually pulls her far away from those stone walls. Leaving her children behind without a formal farewell, Arwen journeys alone into the northern wilderness, seeking the golden woods of her youth. But when she finally crosses the borders of Lothlorien, she finds a silent, winter-stripped graveyard instead of a magical sanctuary. Galadriel has long since crossed the sea, taking the stabilizing power of the elven ring Nenya with her, and the protective enchantments have totally unraveled from the soil. The majestic, golden malorn trees are completely dead, their branches barren, and scraping against a gray sky. The ethereal singing that used to echo through the canopy has stopped, replaced by the hollow, cold whistling of the wind rushing through rotting timbers. She ascends the abandoned, collapsing platform where she and Aragorn had once passionately sworn their lifetime vows under a summer sun, finding nothing but cold frost and crumbling gray dust. It's a brutal, haunting visualization of her total loss, proving that the vibrant world she willingly traded her soul for has utterly vanished before she even had the chance to die. There's only one final spot left for her to visit before the end. On the lonely, windswept mound of Cairn Amroth, the exact spot where their epic love story originally kindled, Arwen lays her weary body down on the cold earth to finally embrace death. When the end arrives, there's no cinematic crowds, no swelling orchestral melodies, and no beautiful white blossoms falling from a thriving tree. She passes away in absolute obscurity, a solitary figure freezing on a forgotten hill, marking the literal end of the ancient high elven lineage remaining on Middle-earth soil. With her final breath, the last direct link to the ages of starlight and the kingdoms of old are permanently severed from the continent's history. Her monumental sacrifice wasn't a soaring cinematic victory. It was a slow, agonizing closing of a 3,000-year-old book, leaving the physical world entirely to the cold reality of human mortality. When you look back at her choice now, does Arwen's story feel like a beautiful act of devotion or the ultimate tragedy of the ring? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.